flywheel starting. So what is it that we're going to talk about tonight?
And my question is, I am not a technical person, but I have technical understanding, and I search oDesk all the time, and I look at the contractors, and I think, okay, well, I can hire this guy in, Uruguay for $10 an hour, and he says he can build me an e-commerce website, and the profile looks good, and there's good reviews and all of that, but I know that there's a potential to get junky code,
Yeah.
and I feel vulnerable because I can't check the code. How do
you get started?
I get started and feel comfortable knowing that I'm putting my time, effort, and money in the right place?
Yep. Okay, good. That's an oDesk specific, so I'll get to it. What else?
Just some great interviewing questions or tests or other ways to kind of filter candidates.
Okay.
Do you think you can build a startup just virtually? Can you have a whole workforce that is spread throughout the country, throughout the world, and how can you effectively manage them?
Okay.
How you differentiate yourself from Elance.
Okay.
I'd love to hear some outsourcing tips.
Yeah. Okay. What else?
How to effectively manage your company as you start to grow, to a lot of employees, kind of so you have time to still grow your business while your business is being managed.
Yep. Okay.
Biggest mistake you made at oDesk?
All right.
How can you find a team when you have limited to no funding?
Okay. All right. Should we get started with this, and then we can add more as we go? And then if anything comes up in the meantime, just redirect. Like if we're on something good and you want to learn more. So let me start with one thing that's not on the list, and that's my favorite subject, me. I started with a little company called Pure Software. Pure was a really successful software development tools company. So essentially, our company helped people write better software help software developers be better. It identified really hard to find memory leaks in their code, which they could spend weeks trying to find, and we had a product that did it like that. So developers loved it and wanted to use it because it saved them time, and then of course managers would pay for it because any tool that a developer would use that would write better code was great. And the company was started by a guy by the name of Reed Hastings. Does anybody know Reed?
Yeah, Netflix.
CEO of a little company called Netflix. And so Pure was very successful. We went public in 1995. Ultimately, we acquired a bunch of companies, and then we were sold to a company called Rational Software. Rational did a lot of the same things. They had a bunch of tools to help software developers write better code. And then ultimately, Rational was bought by IBM. $2.1 billion. I was employee number 20 at Pure, and then became employee number 131,000 at IBM. So I went from this tiny little startup, and through every stage. Rational was about 800 employees. We had about $700 million in revenue, and then rode it all the way to employee number 130,000 at IBM. And when IBM first acquired us, I forgot to tell this story, but Eric learned this at dinner. I was invited to be employee number 3 at Netflix. And I didn't think DVDs in the mail were a good idea. And I was wrong, apparently, because it was a great idea. But I liked what was going on at Rational. At the time, I had a lot of responsibility. I was learning a ton. I had, global responsibility, so I was traveling a bunch, and that was appealing to me. And I realized that there were 4 things that I wanted out of my career and out of life at that point. 1 was impact, the opportunity to make a big impact. 2 was growth and development. I wanted to feel like I was on a pretty steep learning curve trajectory. 3 was financial reward. I wanted to know that I was being paid fairly, or that I had an opportunity for some upside or some game-changing wealth. And 4 was balance, right? So what keeps you busy outside of work, or do you like the job that you're doing, et cetera. And so when IBM first acquired us, I felt like I had all of those things. I was getting more responsibility. I was part of the integration team. So I was one of 3 people at Rational responsible for integrating us into IBM. And so I was flying to Armonk, I was meeting with executives, I was learning a ton about integrating companies. they have different bands of employees, and they have bands 1 through 10, and I was what was known as a band D, which is an executive. So that meant I got to go to all the leadership development back in our month that I wanted. So once a month I was back going through, great leadership training. IBM spends a lot in educating their employees, especially folks on this leadership track. And it was really exciting, to be part of this integration into this, global company. But after about 6 months, I was like, I don't know. The growth and development had flattened. I started looking at jobs that I could have 6 months down the road, and I didn't, or 6 months, forget about that, 5 years down the road, and I didn't want that job today, right? So the growth curve after the integration stuff, when you're part of a big company, the growth curve is kind of flat. And as far as impact, with 131,000 employees, I couldn't get anywhere near the bridge of the ship to try and steer it. I was like so far away from that. And so I realized I couldn't have a big impact. My number was almost $200 million at IBM, which was a fraction of $14 billion software group number. So it was at that point that I realized that I was better suited for a startup. And I left IBM and went to IntelliBank. And you had asked the biggest lesson learned at oDesk. Well, let me start with IntelliBank. So the company IntelliBank was an intelligent bank of your knowledge in the cloud. So you could store artifacts, think documents, and you could share them with other people that you had relationships with. Does that sound familiar to anybody? A little company called Dropbox. So we were Dropbox 7 years ago, done wrong. The product was too complex. There wasn't a viral mechanism to share. We had tried to sell it to enterprise clients. And so, Michael, to your point, sort of product market fit, validate that there's an actual market for what it is you're building. Well, we were doing that, and customers were coming back and saying, yeah, I really want this. Our problem was we had the wrong customers. We were going to enterprises, and enterprises were saying, yes, we would love it. If you built in workflow, we'd really love it. So we built in workflow. And then the enterprise would say, oh, and if you built in messaging, we'd love that too. And oh, by the way, if you also built in check-in and check-out, because I want to make sure that if I upload a version and Eric has a version, that we're not going to step on each other, right? Like if I'm editing a doc and he goes to edit it and then we try and merge those docs, well, he needs to know that I have it checked out. So you need check-in and check-out. And you need security down to the object level. And I want read for this person and write for that person, and then. So we start building all of this stuff. And the market was telling us they wanted it. The problem was the market didn't want to pay for it. So there's product market fit where somebody says, yes, I would like that. And then there's product market fit for where they say, yes, I would like that, and I'm willing to pay for it. And our other problem was that was enterprises. And by the time you get done with all of that functionality, the next thing you know, you're competing with Microsoft SharePoint. Does everybody know SharePoint? Yeah. Enterprise class, document management. Well, meanwhile, there's great company now, Dropbox. They had a much better model. It doesn't have check-in and check-out, doesn't have versioning, no provisioning, no security down to the object level, but it's inherently viral. It solved one problem very, very well. They built millions and millions of users, and you can scale from there. And you needed no sales force to sell it, where we would have needed a full-on enterprise sales force just to sell the product. So in the process of trying to raise money for IntelliBank, we were not successful. We raised about $2 million in like an angel round. But the problem was we were like, by the time we went to raise an A, we were past an A, but we weren't quite a B. So we were like an A- or an A.5 or whatever you want to call it. And it became really hard to raise money because we were like a tweener. For the money that we had already invested in the company, they wanted to see more. And they wanted to see a better product market fit and a narrower focus. And so I think we tried to be all things to all people. We tried to say, oh, we're CRM plus document management plus workflow. And VCs would scratch their heads and say, well, what are you again? Which one of those are you? And we just confused the message. So the two lessons learned were product market fit. Make sure there is a huge market for what it is that you're building. Or if it's a small market, make sure you know it's a small market and say, hey, we're going to build a nice lifestyle business on this small market, but we're going to own a large percentage of it with the best product. And then the other is focus. Don't try and be all things to all people. Focus on the one thing that you're good at and make that focus as narrow as possible. Really execute on that and then add other stuff once you prove it. And there's so many valuable lessons on focus we'll probably talk about throughout the night. But one more thing on product market fit. So you need a big market. Then of course you need the money to execute on that market. The next thing you need is good execution. You have to call the right plays and then actually run those plays. And I think you increase your chances of better execution if you have the right people on the team. So you surround yourself with the people that have the skills that you don't have or that you need at that time. So, in the early stages of the business, you need people who are really good with machetes, right? Because you're in the jungle. You're blazing a trail where nobody's been before. You certainly haven't been there before. So you need scrappy, you need people that can execute well. You don't need somebody who can drive the Mercedes on the highway. You're not there yet. But as your business grows, you've got to recognize that some people with machetes shouldn't be driving Jeeps, right? They're trying to drive the Jeep and can't put the knife down, and then they're better off back in the jungle. So it's, this metaphor of jungle, dirt road, highway. Recognize where you are and surround yourself with the right people at the right time. And at IntelliBank, I went out and built a sales team thinking, we got to have a sales team to sell this beautiful product we built. And you want to burn cash, hire a bunch of salespeople because you're paying them whether they're selling or not. And, they're out there trying to sell this thing. We were successful, but not enough to pay or to keep the lights on for all of those bodies that we had. And in retrospect, we should have had 0 salespeople, right? We should have been out testing and building and proving that we had something that customers really wanted, and then figured out the route to market. But we tried to figure out how to sell it before we even had a good product market fit. So the biggest mistake, lack of focus, tried to be all things to all people, and product market fit. We didn't have a good product market fit. That was at IntelliBank. Now at oDesk, biggest mistake was underestimating the time it would take to build a network business. So oDesk's strategy is pretty simple. We help the world's best companies get access to the world's best talent online. So this is about hiring people to work for you remotely, not on premise. And the problem we're solving is that the talent typically doesn't live where the jobs exist, right? So you have business here, but it might be hard to find really great programmers here. Not a lot of iOS programmers available in Santa Clarita. So you have to now go outside of your geography to get access to talent. And similarly, in the Bay Area right now, there's a talent shortage, despite the fact unemployment's at an all-time high. So the talent doesn't live where the jobs exist. And there's lots of people out there that would love to be able to make money regardless of where they live. We built a marketplace to connect talent to jobs. And then we provide tools to manage those workers as if they were in the same office. And we have technology so you can manage them by walking around via the internet. And then we handle all of the payment and the statutory. So if you think about our business in the context of like e-commerce, for example, Amazon or eBay, and think back, the beginning of e-commerce, Amazon was about buying books, and they're going to help you find the right book, get delivery of the book, and pay for the book. eBay was going to help you find the right Beanie Baby or Pez dispenser or collectible, get delivery of it, and pay for it. oDesk is like e-commerce, but it's e-work. Find the right worker, get delivery of the work, and pay for the work, all via the internet. And our vision is that e-work will be like e-commerce. Ultimately, right? E-commerce right now is pretty big. Anybody know what percentage of goods we buy online versus on-premise? Anybody want to take a guess? So what do you think it is?
20%.
10%, 20%, 60%? Yeah, 6% in the US. 6%, only 6%. So a little bit of a bubble because I thought at least 50%, right? It's 6%. So after 18 years of e-commerce, we're at 6% penetration of goods bought online versus on-site. Now, what does e-work look like at 6%? Imagine 20 years from now, 6% of all work going through the internet as opposed to on-premise. Is it believable? Is it reasonable? Do we think that can happen? Well, we certainly do, right? So our company has 110 employees, and we have about 250 full-time equivalent contractors that come to work for us every day. So we're eating our own cooking in order to get work done. And the reason we do that is because we can't find the people in Silicon Valley, and even if we could find them, we can't afford them, or we don't have the time or the energy to compete against Google and Facebook and Zynga. Well, we can compete against Zynga now, but the other companies, you can't compete. They can afford to pay more and attract them with yoga and lunches and all of the stuff they offer. So we've built this leveraged workforce to help us build our platform. We have about 120 engineers. We have 0 developers in Redwood City, so up in the Bay Area. We have 0 developers. We don't have to compete locally. We have distributed and remote engineers all over the world: Ukraine, Russia, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh. QA team distributed, managed by a guy in New York, most of them in Russia. Our support team is in the Philippines, so if you call oDesk and you need support help, you'll get routed to the Philippines. The daily wage for a nurse in the Philippines is 50 cents an hour, so they make $4 a day. A nurse, we pay them $4 or $5 an hour, so they can make almost 10 times what they would make as a nurse in the Philippines answering support calls for our customers. So they're thrilled, right, because they can make significantly more. Oh, and by the way, there are no nursing jobs in the Philippines. So it's this leveraged workforce that we're tapping into. So one way we manage scale, which is one of the questions, is that recognize that it takes a really long time to hire talent, typically 90 days on average for a local hire. And we're hiring locally. I mean, we have 15 recs open right now in Redwood City, but we augment that with online staff in order to get more work done. The second way we manage scale is recognizing that you have the right talent at the right time. And as a CEO or a leader, surrounding yourself with people who have the skills you don't have. And I think one of the mistakes is not recognizing soon enough that it's time to change, right? So we have a completely new executive team. New VP of Marketing, Jalay Bisharat was formerly the VP of Marketing at Amazon and then OpenTable. And Jalay came in to oDesk in the last year, and we had a great VP of Marketing, but he was a good dirt road guy, right? He had never taken a company to scale like Jalay had, running marketing at Amazon. That's a big job. So we had to get somebody who'd already been on the highway. They know what the highway looks like. They know how to operate at high speed. They know how to build a large team that can scale. We brought in a CFO, and the CFO was the CFO at Expedia, right? So he has taken a company public. He's been the CFO of a large company. He's built large teams. He's seen scale. We brought in a VP of engineering who ran all of Java development at Sun. So he was an SVP at Sun. He had 2,500 people in his organization. That's a guy who's seen growth and scale. He's done it before. We brought in a VP of product who ran product at PayPal. Well, we have to pay people around the world, very relevant. He's also seen large scale. So in the last year, we've swapped out all of the executives on the team, recognizing that you need this infrastructure. You need you have to skate where the puck is going and then hire in advance of need, so you have the people that can help the organization to get there. And then one of the other questions was, how do you do that so the business can run without you having to get in all of the details? Well, the way you do it, back to my point about big market, money to execute, call the right plays, it's having the people on the team that you have the confidence that they can run it without you being in the room, right? So I get to come to LA and chat with you, and I don't have to worry. I know that things back at home are fantastic because I have people that are better at each of their jobs than I could ever be. So it's surrounding yourself with the right talent and then trusting that talent to execute. Now, you have to make sure that you're set up for that, right? So one, you've got to be able to attract the talent, and it's hard to do if you don't have the money to pay them, and so we'll get to that. But you also have to make sure that you've put good infrastructure in place. The job of the CEO, my job is to create an environment where everybody can do their best. So it's my job to make sure that we're set up for people to be successful. And what that means is that there's clarity as to where the company is going. You've got to be crystal clear with everybody about where are we pointed. And then the next most important thing is, how are we going to get there? So we are going to San Francisco, and we're going to take the 5. That's how we're going. That's where we're going, and that's how we're going to get there. Well, the next thing you need to know is who's responsible for what. So who's going to drive the car? Who's going to be shotgun? Who's going to have the maps, right? or GPS, who's going to work the music, right? Who's in charge of food? Everybody has to know what their responsibility is, and then they need to know how are they going to be measured. What standards are you going to hold them accountable to? So it's pretty, it sounds basic, but I'll tell you what happened at oDesk, and this is one of the valuable lessons learned, which you asked me about 10 minutes ago. Clarity as to where you're going, clarity as to how you're going to get there. Everybody needs to know what they're responsible for, and then the standards of how you're going to measure them, okay? And so I thought we had this. I thought that it was crystal clear where the company was going. I stand up once a month in front of the company and say, here's where we're going. I'll show a slide and it'll say, oDesk is going here. And here's how we're going to get there. This is what we're prioritizing. It's this, this, and this. For us, it's right now, it's quality of the network. So people come in and they get good quality people. We do an effective job of match. And the second thing is usability. Our site isn't as usable as we need it to be. And if we don't deliver a great result for clients who post jobs with great contractors, then they won't come back and do more, right? And so our strategy is pretty simple. More contractors bring more jobs bring more contractors. And so we're prioritized on quality and usability. Then next is what comes after knowing where you're going and how you're going to get there.
What are you going to do when you get there?
Well, who's responsible for what, right? Mm-hmm. Who's responsible? Yeah, what are you going to do when you get there? That's a good question too. But what are you responsible for, right? Well, I thought it was crystal clear what everybody was responsible for. And what's one way to figure out if that's actually true?
Ask them to tell you what they're responsible for.
You could ask them. So that's what I did. I said, hey, why doesn't every executive at the company write down in a Google Doc what they're responsible for and what they think everybody else is responsible for? And then each of you do the same thing, and then we'll merge those lists and we'll see how accurate we are. And so we went through this exercise. There was 140 conflicts just among the East staff team. 140 conflicts. It took us 90 days to resolve those 140 conflicts where you thought you were responsible for something, I thought you were responsible for something else, and I thought I was responsible for the thing that you thought you were responsible for. And we had to actually get in a room and say, well, who's actually responsible for this and who's, let's resolve this conflict. And that was mind-boggling to me. I thought it was crystal clear what we were all responsible for. So the biggest lesson for me, probably in the last year, was this. I thought it was crystal clear. I didn't think I could be any more clear. And the fact of the matter is that the team didn't share that perspective. So I fired him and got all new people. No, that's not true. So we defined it, right? We actually sat down and we went through this exercise that seems like ridiculous. And you may say, well, we're so small, we don't have to do that. I think you have to do that. Or you can go way off course in the wrong direction, or you can have people on the team going one way and you going another. So I think it's imperative that you actually figure out where you're going, how you're going to get there, who's responsible for what, and how you should hold yourself accountable, right, to those standards. So I think that's Matt, biggest mistake in Telebank, biggest mistake oDesk, managing scale.
Why don't you go back to that for just a moment, because I was furiously writing down your answer and I missed the nugget of what do you do when you've identified that the team does not know who's on first, they've done the exercise, and you didn't fire them all. What did you do?
You have to get in the room and you have to resolve those conflicts. So you have to say, look, because your team can't be productive if two people think they're responsible for the same thing, they're going to be battling over it. Somebody's going to think they own it. You need a single owner. If two people own it, nobody owns it.
Right.
So,
but then you said that you replaced the executive team over the last year.
We did, yeah. The two weren't. They were mutually exclusive.
Got it.
We traded up executives. We hired over some people in order to scale. Right. We needed people who have operated at higher levels in order to get where we're going. It had nothing to do with people who had conflicts over what they were doing.
Thank you.
With regards to managing scale, did I get it, or is there more on that?
Managing scale.
Somebody? Okay. All right. So next on my list is, let's see, interview questions. So what kind of questions do you ask? So I'm going to start general, and then we'll go specific. So generally, I think there's there's sort of four important areas for hiring talent. And I draw a triangle. I'll do this. I'm a visual person, so I draw a triangle that looks like this. So it's really four triangles. It's a big triangle, right? Split it down the middle and then upside down triangle. And in this top box, I put personal characteristics, right? In the box in the middle, right underneath it, I put motivation. And then on one side, I put skills. The other side, I put knowledge, right? Personal characteristics, motivation, skills, and knowledge. So when hiring, which of those do you think is the most important thing? Anybody?
Personal characteristics,
Okay.
because you can teach the others.
Personal characteristics, because you can teach the other things. That's the answer, right? It's really hard to teach personal characteristics like, what are characteristics that are important to you at your company?
Drive.
Drive.
Trust.
Trust.
Integrity.
Integrity,
Integrity.
honesty, yeah.
Dependability.
Dependability. Smart.
Motivation.
Right? I've tried
Yeah.
to teach smart, and it's just really hard, right?
I've tried to learn it, and it's even harder.
Me too. Next is motivation. Now, you may say, no, that's BS, because you need a certain level of skills or knowledge to get in the game. Like, you're not going to hire an accountant that isn't a CPA, or that isn't good with numbers. Or you're not going to hire a programmer that hasn't built a mobile app before, because mobile app is what you're building, right? And so you might need a certain base level of skills or knowledge to get in the game in the first place. But all things being equal, it's about personal characteristics and the motivation. And the motivation is sort of back to what it is that you want out of, or that the candidate or that the employee wants out of a job and a career. Like, you don't want to hire somebody that says, look, the most important thing to me is money. It's all about salary. I need to get paid a ton of money or else I'm not going to go to work there. Probably not high alignment with what you have to offer. You may have, what you have to offer is some stock in the company. You don't have a lot of money to offer a big salary, but you could offer a percentage of the company, which could be a big payout if things work out. And we go back to my Netflix experience, or my lack of Netflix experience. I turned down the job because IBM was paying me a ton of money in salary, right? But at the end of the day, you wake up one day after working there for 20 years and you've got a nice big fat salary. You're not going to get rich on that, right? You're going to spend that and maybe you end up with a BMW or something, but it's not game-changing wealth, right? And so for me, I wanted to step up to the plate. I wanted chips in the game. I was willing, when I left IBM, I was willing to take a fat salary, cut it in half or a third, and risk the guaranteed cash for chips on the table of really connecting with the ball, right? And so when you're interviewing candidates, you want to make sure that the motivation of what they want is what you have to offer. Because if they're not aligned, you're going to end up with somebody who's not super excited to get up every morning and come to work for you, right? Or come work with you. So you have to make sure that you have good alignment on the things I mentioned earlier: impact, growth and development, financial reward, and balance. You probably want somebody that wants limited balance, limited financial reward for the chance of some big upside, cares a lot about growth and development because in a startup you're doing lots of jobs, and somebody that wants to make a big impact. Right? Somebody that wants to take an idea from nothing and turn it into something, hopefully a valuable business, right? So that's my general guidance on hiring, and I could throw out specific questions that I like. But if we transition to something a little bit more tactical with how do you hire online workers? Like, what questions do you ask for online talent? So these are people who are going to work for you on demand. These are people you're going to get, think of it almost as like on a temporary basis, but you want them to be connected enough to what you're doing and excited about what you're doing, because you don't want somebody to start and then 3 weeks later leave and you have to start from scratch, right? So you want to make sure that they're bought in. Well, I think all the same things hold true. You care about the personal characteristics. You care about their motivation. I think it's a good idea to ask. Say, hey, are you looking for long-term or short-term? Can you get excited about this app or that app? What is it that you want to do? Like, what's the most important thing to you? Is it the money or is it the impact? Like, you try and get a sense of what's motivating them. Right? And we have these engineers who have worked with us for years, and what they care about is they want to work on interesting products. They want to work on things that they're excited about. So we have people that work in our payment functionality who get really excited about payment. We have people that work in the marketplace who are really excited about matching algorithms and trying to connect the best contractor with the best client, right? And that's exciting to them. We have people that work on the manage piece of it. So I think it's really important to figure out that motivation piece. And then, with regards to skills, I think it's pretty basic. I'm a huge fan of sort of try before you buy. So just in my own personal life, hired a photo editor. Take a bunch of photos, and I don't have time to Photoshop them, so I posted a job on oDesk. I got 79 photo editors applied. I narrowed it down to 8, and I narrowed the 8 down based on their hours, based on their feedback. I don't care about rate, because the rate is cheap enough that doesn't really matter. There was one who was high priced who I dismissed. They were too expensive. But for the most part, I care more about quality and hours worked. And I looked at samples of their work. They all have portfolios, so I can look at before and after pictures and pick the ones that I like the most. I've narrowed the list down to 8, and to all 8, I set up a Dropbox folder and said, here's 2 photos, and I want you to take 2 heads from this photo and switch them with 2 heads in this one, lighten the whole thing, take out the red eye, the lights in the background. I gave them full instructions, and I'm at the stage now where I'm going to see all 8s. They're going to submit their final, and I'm going to pick the one I like best, and then I'm going to add them to my bench of photo editors, and then every time I need a photo edit, I'm just going to upload it to that Dropbox and have them do it. And we'll work out a price, either by the hour or per photo.
Now you're doing this, are you paying them to show you the quality of the work, or are you just, what are you doing?
I did it as a test, and since it's a pretty basic test, it's it's probably not, it's less than 20 minutes of Photoshop.
Okay.
And a lot of the people are $5 an hour. One's in Bangladesh, one's in the Philippines, one's in the US, $10 an hour. And they're motivated to get the job. Now, if I hire them, I'm going to have somewhere between 20 and 30